This stream I'm starting 1 minute early to get everything up and going. So yes, hi, I'm Daniel, as you know probably. Join the Twitch chat if you have any questions. So yeah, I'm Daniel, I do curl, and I've done a curl release today again, 7.71.0. We do curl releases every 8 weeks if we stick to the schedule, which we try hard to do. I try hard to do. This is the 192nd release. So I'm doing a little small talk first to get everyone to join the stream who wants to. I made it clear that I was going to stream this live at 10 Central European Daylight Saving Time, which is now. So yes, I did a curl release. That's fun. I enjoy doing the releases because it's getting all of those bug fixes out the door and getting people to try it out and sort out people's problems. And I always get that sense of relief and a little bit of calm. And yes, we got that out the door. It's awesome. Sit back, relax, breathe, and then boom, the bugs come trickling in and I get more work and then we get up to speed again and we're working on the next release. So unless sorry, I shouldn't do this in the morning. I should have more coffee. So I was going to say, unless we get any particular problems or issues, there will be another release in 8 weeks. We always try to do that. So if we have issues or if you, my friends, find any particular ugly problems before that, we might do a patch release between now and 8 weeks. But ideally, hopefully, I really hope that we don't have that major bug that will require me to do a patch release. So what did we do this time? I'm going to go through a few of the things that we did and I want to highlight, and I think this time actually we did a lot of things. My script counted 136 bug fixes for this release, which I think is a new high. I think we've never done so many or counted so many bug fixes in a single release ever. I'm not sure what that says. We're also very liberal in counting bug fixes, so basically everything that fixes something in a previous release is called a bug fix, even if we fix, test cases and documentation and everything. So maybe you wouldn't count that as a bug fixes in other projects or areas. So when I do the release like this, I usually do them in the morning when I start work. Well, now it's summer. I'm a little bit lazy in summer, so I started after 8 o'clock this morning. I packaged everything, tagged the release, pushed everything, and then the website updates automatically, reflecting the latest stuff. So on the web page, we can see that it now says 7.71, released today, June 24th, 2020. And none of the downloads are currently of the latest version. Of course, the source packages are, but no binary packages have been updated yet. Maybe my script that checks for updates only runs twice a day, so maybe it's updated, but it hasn't detected them yet. So 771.0, too many sevens, too high version numbers. I have this little plan that maybe I should go to version 8 around the 200th release, which is 8 releases away. Maybe. I'll need to sort of let that sink in and I don't know, get used to the idea first. Version 8 feels scary. Why would we go to version 8? So the last few releases I've toyed with making a new sort of this image release. Sort of this curl image when I do my release blog posts. So I decided to just refer to this release as blobs and retries, because blobs and retries are two of the changes that are coming in this release. So I made a little logo with blobs on it. Well, or paint splatter, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps most notable in this release is not that it is release 192. And good morning, everyone, in the chat. So if you have questions or comments or anything, just ask them there. I decided to try it out to not show the Twitch chat in the video this time, so you can say whatever you want and it won't be visible on the video. I think I'll try to read it and follow up if you have any thing other than puns and cheap jokes on my behalf. So okay, that's the Twitch chat. And so yes, curl 771.0. Most notable things this time, I like to sum up the release with all these numbers because they're crazy. I guess I'm the one who likes the numbers most and nobody else really cares, but I like to do that anyway. So I wanted to first start out by highlighting and talking a little bit about two security advisories. And well, these are the first security advisories of 2020 for curl, which I think is awesome. I think we managed to do 260 days or so since the previous security advisory was announced, which I think is great. I wanted it to be a longer period, of course, but then I need to do better. And in this case, neither of the problems are really related to our programming language, so they're not due to C, which people tend to not bother me, but sort of poke on me about. But so okay, so I wanted to just highlight a particular problem a little bit. I'll go into the problems a little bit. So here's one, and the first one, which is actually the only one, which is the Lib Curl issue. The other one is an issue for the curl tool. So this is the Lib Curl issue that is going to possibly affect you if you're using Lib Curl in something else than the curl tool. And yes, it hurts in my soul to admit it, but of course I did the bug and I did a patch too. But so it is like that. If you set a name and a password to curl and to do HTTP authentication, which is still a thing. So, and if you then set a password with an @ sign in it, curl misbehaved on how to handle that. And really in this, it's called CVE 2020-80, where is the number? Here. 2020-8169. And if you Google it, I hope that you will soon end up on this page and no other silly page. So anyway, if you set a password with an @ sign, curl would mess up and regenerate the URL, reparse the URL, and get it wrong. So it would get the right part of that password, the part on the right side of the @ sign, as part of the host name, and then it would send that host name to the name resolver functions, possibly to your DNS server, and then would sort of expose parts of the password of your password to the DNS, and DNS being in the clear, so it would just reveal it to everyone on the network who could read the network. So yeah, it's a pretty nasty bug. It's really hard to exploit for anyone, of course, and you really need an @ sign in your password, and who does that exactly? Of course you don't. No, well, actually, more than one people ended up noticing this bug, so apparently it is not that uncommon. But it's really hard to exploit this bug, at least, since it's hard to enforce to force someone else to use an @ sign in their password and then actually be there to read the network to actually figure out a part of their password. So yeah, that's it. So And what's more interesting, perhaps, well, maybe not more, but what's interesting is that we fixed this bug, and I got it reported, and I fixed it, and I wasn't smart and clever enough to realize the security impact of it. So this is bad. What a clumsy error, and I fixed it and I committed it and pushed it to Git, and we tested it and we were all happy. And then someone else came along and pointed out the security related angle to this, and sort of it dawned on me that yes, of course. So then we made it a security problem, and that's also why we pushed this fix to the public already long before we considered it a security fix. Just a detail, but anyway, that means that this security problem was actually available to figure out in the code much earlier than and then today, of course. But again, hard to exploit. Really silly. It hurts in my soul that I made it like this, but okay. The first CVE of 2020, and the other CVE, it's also similarly totally annoying. We call that 2020-8177. Well, we call it, I registered this CVE and I got this number. So I call it curl overwrite local file with -j. And this is a problem that it exists only with the curl tool. It exists in all curl tools ever released that supports the -j, which is everything since 7.20.0. So yeah, if -j is an option that reads the content. It's for HTTP when you want to download a file from HTTP, and the content disposition header hints about the real file name to use. Exactly. Now someone is reading up ahead. So if you use -j, it reads the file name from the content disposition header and saves the file using that name locally. Which is, I mean, if you invoke curl like that, you have no idea what file name you will get from the server, right? So it could potentially use a file name that you already have locally. So we have a check for that, so you don't accidentally overwrite the local file. And also, since we have this, due to some other stupid reasons in the code, we cannot combine $J with -i, and the -i being include headers in the output. But since due to some just stupid logic in the code, we prevented -j and -i in that order and not in the opposite order. So anyway, to put it shortly, if you would use the options in another order, you could overwrite the local file with HTTP headers. So if you were aware of that and you had a malicious server somehow, you could actually get the server to overwrite your local files. And you could, for example, if you would invoke curl in your home directory, you could, with -j, you could, for example, select the file name to be, .bashrc or .login or something that you're likely to have in your home directory. And you could overwrite that with headers from the HTTP server. And if you, for example, would overwrite one of those bash or shell scripts, they're really good at ignoring illegal lines. So you could actually trick it into saving something that could be executed by a shell, for example. A little bit far-fetched too, but still. Suddenly a security problem. We fixed it. We awarded the guy $700 in bug bounty rewards. Hopefully we will reward the coming security problems even more. 700 is our new record high. Yeah, you can actually avoid the problem with the shell scripts executing the entire thing. But I think the guy who reported it tried it with overriding bash rc with some random headers, and he actually managed to add a header that then actually was executed in that kind of context. So I don't know. You would have to have imagination, and you would have to have a malicious server, and you would pretty much know how to know that you have a user who's going to do that and attack that user. Content disposition, the header can specify a full path, of course, but curl skips the entire path and only uses the filename part and tries to save that in your local directory where you invoke curl. And the check if the file already exists is done when the body arrives. So it would say, because it shouldn't be possible to save headers first. So it would save headers first and then detect, is the file there? Oh, it's there, stop it. But then it had already saved headers. So that's why it would save only headers and not the actual response body in an already existing file. Anyway, you can read it. I think I've detailed it enough for everyone to understand. Yeah. So if there's anything unclear in the advisory, go ahead and ask me, or ask for clarification or file a bug or whatever, and we will clarify it, because I think it's important that everyone who wants to can figure it out and understand, and well, understand the impact and how it affects you and what you are going to do about it, and address it somehow. You could then imagine that since this affects all curl versions since 7.20, did I say that? I think so. Basically, it's 10 years ago or something, that this affects the curl command line on a lot of different operating systems. But they're not part of our bug bounty anyway, so we're paying all the bug bounties ourselves, thanks to donations. It's certainly the result of different options being added at different times, and also I think maybe a result of how our command line option parser works. So it's a little bit of everything there. Possibly also slightly bad imagination when writing test cases that verify that this actually works or doesn't work. So yeah, $700 for that. So we paid $1,100 in bug bounty awards for this release. So hopefully we won't have to pay $1,100 for every release going forward. But sure, if you keep finding this kind of problems, I can guarantee you that we will pay even more. We're trying to raise the amounts that we're handing out in the bug bounty program. So even though I don't think this is the worst problem we've had reported in the bug bounty program, it's the new record amount, $700. Let's see if we can bump it over $1,000 for the next security problem we get. Okay, then, so we recorded what I call, changes, something that changes behavior or adds stuff compared to the previous release, four of them. And one that is very interesting, I think, for Windows users is that we're adding a support for, and this is a bit complicated. So if you build curl on Windows using OpenSSL for TLS, that build can now use the native CA store on Windows instead of using the bundled or provided PEM file for the verifying the CA servers in the certificate that you get from TLS servers. So by setting this option, curl SSL opt native CI, you can actually ask the lib curl to extract, and it doesn't really extract them, but it's sort of it uses the Windows CA store instead than of the provided PEM store, which I think is what a lot of Windows users want. We ended up marking this experimental because there's some details left undecided on how exactly how it's going to work together with the other verify options. So we got to this very late in the cycle, so we just started sort of debating this back and forth again this last weekend, so we didn't really get time to do it better than experimental. So we might tweak it in which priority and order they work. But if you're on Windows, if you're using curl on Windows, this might be something you want to look into and provide us with some feedback on how you think it should work, and we should then decide properly and document it and unmark the experimental tag for hopefully the next release. And related, maybe related, but when it comes to certificates and options in libcurl, we have 7 new curl easy setup options. And why 7? Because we have now a bunch of certificate and key options that you now can provide what I call as blobs. There you can now provide those keys and certificates as pointers basically to memory buffers instead of pointing out file names. So perfect, for example, if you're using curl without the file system, or you want to embed it in your application without providing a file, or whatever the reason is. However you want to do it, now you can provide them just built into your binary, or maybe linking to in embedded systems to maybe put it in some memory, or it doesn't really matter how, but now we provide the means for doing this. And while we were doing that, we noticed that this curl opt proxy issue cert option actually didn't exist. It only existed for the direct host thing. You know, you can have TLS connections to the host, to the server, the remote server, and you can have a separate one independent to your Hp S Proxy. So basically we have to have an entire set of options for the server and the same set of options for the proxy. And we just someone detected that we missed one of those for the proxy. I guess this only shows that people are not using Hp S Proxy that much, or at least not this option. And here's another thing that has been requested in various ways many times, that we now provide the retry all errors options to curl. Here's it's a very, I would say, blunt tool. So it basically asks curl to, whatever error you get, try the operation again, which of course is a recipe for doing really nasty loops if you're getting an error that just won't repair itself, like 404, you entered the wrong URL. Maybe it won't just automatically fix itself just because you retry. Or maybe it does because you know that it's supposed to have that file name and you're just waiting for it to show up. So it's basically a way to say, I know that this will or could work at some point, so let's retry until it actually works. This the retry way, so you would ask for a number of times to retry. You should probably use some caution and carefulness when using this, because you could probably end up with some annoying loops and tormenting your servers if you use this the wrong way. So just consider that when you do retry on any error, because the error might be a real error that you don't want to just, try again on. So I would say the 2 security problems and these 4 changes, they are sort of the highlight of this release. And if you wanna, that's the big things for this release. Ta-da! We're done. 23 minutes in, so that's it. But when I worked on this blog post, and sometimes I think I spend too much time writing blog posts of various things. But anyway, well, About the retry option, we've actually had the retry. We get a lot of bugs reported about the retry not covering their errors. So we've had a lot of users asking for it. Couldn't we make the retry also try on this error, in this particular situation, and in this case? So even if it may sound like a niche request, this particular way we added the retry all errors is actually a way to try to cater for a lot of different use cases that we've got requested and asked for by a lot of users. So I don't think it's that niche that it might sound like. And hopefully by providing the option in curl and with a proper retry counter and back off timeouts and stuff like that, it would also encourage users to actually do retrying in a proper way rather than they failing to do it themselves in silly loops that would just torture servers even more than this option will do. I don't know. We're doing our best. So over to I was just talking about writing blog posts, and usually when I do my release blog posts, which my release blog post is really a way to writing a lot of words around the changelog. So the changelog is always on the curl site, so you can actually read all the bug fixes with links to all discussions and bug reports for all the bugs. So they're all there, but this blog post is a way to try to write a little bit more of a story around the problems and things and the work around it. So my blog post, I usually pick out like 8 or 10 bug fixes that I wanted to highlight. And this time I started like that, but I ended up highlighting a lot more bug fixes because I think we actually did a lot of interesting bug fixes this release. So I just wanted to talk you through a bunch of them. Maybe I don't want to go through the entire list because we'll see. So you just so we and they're in a random order, and I'm going to just use my blog post here as a reminder of us what bugs to go through. So for example, we fixed the happy eyeballs algorithm again, or I fixed it, which I really thought we had it nailed, and probably since we didn't have it this time either, it's probably more. There are probably more bug fixes in there to do. Happy eyeballs being the algorithm in where we connect both IPv4 and IPv6 at the same time in parallel, and we go and we stick to the one that connects first, and that's the one we use for the connection. So it actually turned out that when during this release cycle, when someone tried it with a quick connection and it didn't work, so I thought it was quick related, and it was quick related, but I fixed the quick issue first, and then I noticed that the issue was actually also existed in regular TCP. So I fixed it, and it turned out to be a problem when, for example, in my case, I connected to IPv6. That took a really long time, and then I tried to connect to a long series of IPv4 addresses, and they all failed, and then the first IPv6 address timed out, and we would try the next IPv6 address, and it failed. Complicated setup, but now it's fixed at least, and it's also fixed for the quick version, so it should do happy eyeballs properly with either connection method, I hope. I optimized how we allocate memory in several ways in this release. In one particular way is that we're now allocating just one malloc for pretty much for the adder info struct. We have pretty much a copy of the adder info, that's the regular libc struct, but we have our own version of it internally, and we use it in the DNS cache internally, and now we allocate just one malloc instead of 3, which is a performance boost. It removes a few error checks, and it's generally better, of course, with fewer mallocs than more. So, and I also struggled this release cycle to create a document detailing all command line options in curl and in which version they were introduced. All options that still exist, I should say, because in early on we actually removed a few options, I think before 2000 or so. But they're not in this document. So we have today, with the new option we added, we have 232 command line options. So in this document called options in versions, you can figure it out in which version any option was added. And I wanted it done so that we have an easier way to see, well, I want to use this command line option in which curl release do I need to make it work? So pretty much, you know, a lookup table. I want to use -J. When was it added? And it's all in there. And now I also have a few, I have some test cases to make sure that the list is actually in sync with the list that we have in the code. So if we add an option, we should not forget to update that list, hopefully. So starting out easy, though that's just a few bugs. And I've been struggling for a long time. Well, I should probably say it like this. I've tried to learn from previous security mistakes we've done in curl, sort of what has been the common pattern and what can we do to make it less likely that we will reproduce or repeat the same mistakes again in the future. And some of the mistakes that we've done over the sort of maybe the last 3 years, maybe not so much the last year, but before that, they involved since we're talking about C code, they involved realloc, and they have involved integer overflows in various combinations. I think we have maybe 5 different security problems featuring those 2 things. So in this cycle, I went through the entire code and made sure that I wrote a single implementation for code that puts stuff in buffers that can grow. And they grow with realloc then, and they grow to a certain size, and that size is now, previously we had the problem that, well, theoretically they could grow to very, very large sizes, like 2 gigabytes, and at 2 gigabytes assigned 32-bit integer will wrap, and you would have integer overflow problems. But now, so I introduced this single implementation for how to grow a dynamic buffer. I call it dynbuf in the code. It's a single API and it now also has a fixed. Whenever you create one of those buffers in curl in the code, you have to set a maximum size of the buffer that you allow it to grow to. So they can never grow larger than this many bytes, which then is a way to avoid malicious use or accidental use, that it would suddenly grow to ridiculous sizes, and also minimize the number of implementations that grow buffers. I think I removed like 7 of them, into 7 realloc places into this single API instead. It actually reduced code by several hundred lines by going to this single implementation. So it's hopefully better, clearer, easy to read the code, and since it's now using a single implementation, single internal API, it's also easy to test and be sure that it actually works how it's supposed to. And so again, a lot of talk from me, but it should be a better way to do safer string and buffer management in curl. And I also documented the new API in this. You can click this little link and read about it. It's a very simple thing. Maybe we'll expand that API in the future if we have further needs, but I wanted it to be simple and easy to use and easy to understand, so that you, when you read the code afterwards, it actually clarifies the code in a lot of places by removing all, manual things. How do we realloc sizes and how the silly thing, right? How much do you add to the size when you decide to increase the size of a buffer, for example. Now it's one way to do it, and it's, I think it also reduced the number of allocations done when in total. I think it's a general good thing. I have a little project. I'll get into that at some other point, but of course I always look at fixing security related things and sort of learn from old security mistakes, but I have another reason to also look into curl security more and tightening up how we do things. So, and this part of that. I noticed someone tried to do DNS over HPS and use FTP on Mac, and it failed. Yeah, Mac. Okay, so I fixed it. It's a long story, but on Mac we actually use the name resolver functions even for resolving IP addresses, plain numerical ones, simply because they have built-in ways to sometimes convert that IP address to something else depending on things. So that's how we do, and it failed when we used DOE. HTTP 2 turned 5 years. We still have HTTP 2 bugs. I fixed at least one, or was it two, this release? Yeah, so it's a regression. I broke it. It was related to uploading over HTTP 2. It turned out that we stopped reading from the connection a little bit too early, since there could still be some HTTP 2 packets to read. Or was it right? I don't remember. If you're doing quick and HTTP 3 with curl, you can now join the team. This actually, I don't know how much you follow HTTP 3 and the quick adventures, but when you talk quick today, there are a bunch of implementations, like maybe a dozen, maybe 15 different implementations and stacks, server side, and I think most of them actually write both sides. You can client side and server side. And if you have problems or if you have issues and you want to understand it, it's really difficult because there's a lack of tools and it's completely different than TCP. So what do? You can use Wireshark. Wireshark is awesome. But there's also this new way to log the traffic and understand the traffic, visualize the traffic for both quick and H3, and that's called Qlog. Well, Qlog is the logging, and QVis is the visualizer that visualizes the traffic based on the Qlogs. And they have a sort of semi-standard on how to do logging, how to do Qlogs, and now you can do that with curl. You set the environment variable called qlogdir in uppercase to a directory, and curl will save logs in that directory for you. And if you can upload those logs to the QVis site and get it visualized and fancy graphs and looking at figuring out things. And it's a really good way to work with implementers of the stacks to find problems and fix issues. HTTP 3 and Quick are now in the working group last call state, so it is getting closer to being done. Qlog is actually an awesome, Cloudflare TV, they do streaming now with fancy networking related things, and I know Lucas and Robin Marks is the main guy behind Qlog, and Lucas Pardue is Cloudflare guy also. He's also a co-chair of the Quick working group in ITF. They did a stream 2 days ago on Cloudflare TV about Qlog, so you could go and watch that. It's actually awesome it shows some really good insights on how you can use Qlog to figure out details about Quick and H3 and everything. A good fun hour. Yeah, we had broke this curl up CRL file, so I fixed that. I don't know how much you're all into this add trust issue. It turned out that add trust is it is subsidiary to some other CA, but anyway, they had a root cert that expired, and it was part of a lot of CA bundles, and OpenSSL before 1.1.0 had problems with that, so a lot of people got cert expired errors, since um, there would actually be more than one trust chain, and one of them would then include this expired cert. And OpenSSL before 1.1.0 had troubles with that, unless you set this option, flag trusted first, which we didn't do unconditionally in curl. So with curl you would have that problem. I would call it a TLS problem. You can work around the problem by setting this. So this is for really for using old OpenSSL versions that run with this dual trust chain issue. Yeah, but this dual to have more than one trust chain is apparently not uncommon, and it's a supported thing, and it's a thing that TLS stacks should support. So it was a bug. GNU TLS had that bug too. They fixed it, and in OpenSSL 1.1.0 it's apparently fixed as well, because they do this by default. Previously, then you obviously had to set this option, which is I certainly did not understand that by reading the documentation, and I think pretty much nobody else did either. I know that Python set this option, and they sort of by accident avoided this mistake. or well, maybe they were more clever than I am. Quite possibly, actually. So I fixed a few SOX proxy connection. The other day, like a few releases ago, I changed the SOX proxy connection handshaking sequence to get non-blocking, which is actually awesome if you do a lot of SOX connections at the same time, right? With a multi-interface, if you have 100 SOX connections going on in parallel, you want them non-blocking. That'll make them faster, and none of them would, not a single one would block the others. Awesome. But I also did some regressions, introduced some regressions, and two of them I fixed in this release. I broke SOX 5 authentication connections, and I also broke connection close detection while in the handshake. So right now, if you do 770.0 and the SOX proxy closes the connection in the midst of the handshake, it would actually busy loop for a short while until it detects that and bails out. Not a good thing, but now it does it better. I took the time to actually add support for Hp S Proxy in the test suite finally, so that I could verify that it actually works in the test suite. A good thing. Testing, we of course want to test as much as possible in the test suite, even though it's sometimes difficult and a lot of work, but it's also pretty boring work to just add support for crazy stuff to the test suite. Especially when I didn't even find any bugs or anything afterwards, just added it, and a few more tests. Now it takes a little longer to run. We had a little issue, sometimes when someone fixes something in the code and you realize that, yeah, that's clever, why didn't we do that before? So it turns out that if a server tells us, HTTP wise, it says, I'm going to send you 10 bytes, and we read from the server, it's supposed to send us 10 bytes, but it ends up sending us 12 bytes instead. We know that it's an error. It shouldn't send us 12 bytes when it said it would send us 10 bytes. So it's bad. But up until now, we just outputted that in the verbose output, said, whoa, we got too much, continue. Which is a recipe for disaster, because who knows what else happens and what goes wrong. And now it marks the connection for close, so it won't be reused for the next request on the same. So it'll create a new connection for the next request, which has a better chance for success then. And it's a much better way to handle the error. I don't know why we didn't do that before. I was just, blanked out there. I fixed someone, I don't know why, but talking about extreme string lengths, someone noticed that you couldn't use usernames or passwords longer than 255 bytes for when using a proxy. It took this long until someone figured that out. Apparently people are using shorter usernames and passwords in general, or avoid it. I don't know. So yeah, there were really no reason for us to have that limit. It was a sort of a remainder from previous ways of handling things. So I removed that limit, and now by removing the limit, I basically put it to the general string length limit in curl, which is set to 8 megabytes these days. So now you can have 8 megabytes username and password. I hope that'll be enough for a while. It'll be interesting to see when someone runs into that limit. And talking about optimizing allocation things in curl, I have this little script called count mallocs that I just download a 8 gigabyte or 1 gigabyte file from a local host and counts the number of allocations done, and make sure that we don't sort of do anything stupid that just increases that count beyond what seems sensible. So and at the same time I have that script, and at the same time I'm working with a commercial customer who has paid me or wolfSSL for commercial curl support, and they asked me about how much memory do we really require to run curl? You know, a single curl transfer, how much dynamic memory do you need? So I figured, how much do we really need? How much is a easy handle, and how much is the download buffer? What if you set down, you minimize the download buffer size to the minimum, which is a 1K? How much memory? What's the least amount of memory you actually need to do a curl transfer? I mean, like HTTP GET. How much memory do you need? Turns out not that much by my standards, but anyway, it turned out that, well, even if you set the download buffer to 1K, we allocate it to 16K by default, and then we reduce it to 1K if you ask for 1K. So it seemed unnecessary to do that 16K alloc when you don't need it, and then do 1K alloc to sort of shrink the buffer down. So we shouldn't do that. So instead of doing the 16 by default, just get it to 1K, and hey, then we could just allocate the buffer when we need it and free it when we don't need it anymore. So that's what I did. So I changed how we deal with buffers in curl. So now we only allocate the download buffer when we start a transfer, and we free it again when we stop the transfer. So just creating an easy handle now doesn't allocate a buffer, which makes them much smaller. So yes, if you do a lot of curl transfers now, it'll certainly be able to use much less memory. And in particular, if you set down the download buffer size. But setting down the download buffer size might not be a clever thing anyway if you want to have high speed transfers, depending on your system and your network and blah blah blah. But anyway, if you're on a really tiny device, and in my customer's case, I think they have like 1 or 2 megabytes of RAM or something, so they really want to shrink it down. They want the minimum version. So we're down to, I think, on a really small device, you don't need much more than 20K of dynamic memory for curl download, which is still plenty sometimes compared to some other HTTP client things. But in general, HTTP client code for embedded systems, not very good. That's why I also try to sort of get people to run curl even in tiny devices. It's a tested, tried, and trusted way to do client transfer. So, but anyway, my improved then download buffer allocation made us reduce number of allocations even more in my typical download scenario, which is good. Of course, I couldn't do a release without going back to bug fixing the URL API. You would imagine that we've parsed URLs for a while, but it turns out that someone passed in the IPv6 address : and curl didn't support it. And the IPv6 address : what does it mean? Well, : is just zeros, right? 128 bits of zeros. And why is that okay? Turns out that it it is a valid IPv6 address. So our URL parser should be okay with it, because it is an IPv6 address and we should parse IPv6 addresses. So it was just a stupid mistake. And it turns out that some servers, when you run them, then you actually bind them to any address, so on local host at least. So you can actually do that curl command line on some systems. So yeah, but first of all, the URL parser parses IPv6 addresses, right, or host names. So the parser should parse whatever it can parse, and that's valid. And then the second question is, should it connect to it? Fine. And that is a separate question, right? So then it would, oh, what if I try to connect to IPv6 address all zeros? What happens then? And that's a separate question. And in most cases, nothing will happen. It'll just fail because it won't be anything there. But that's up to someone who runs the server, right, or sets up things. So in this particular user's case, who did the file debug, he actually had a server that would answer to these connect. So yeah, just a very minor silly thing to I guess it was pretty much one user who was affected by that, but yeah. And talking about qlog there, that is an environment variable to save qlogs for when you're doing quick. SSL keylog file is another environment variable, right, that I hope you all know about. So SSL keylog file you set to extract TLS secrets into a file when you use curl. And if you then in particular, you use Wireshark. So if you want to do Wireshark to analyze your network traffic at the same time as you're doing the traffic, you use SSL keylog file and Wireshark to use the same file, and voila, you can inspect the traffic the way you want to. You can do the same thing with Quick as well. So you can get Wireshark your Quick connections or HTTP3 connections done in curl case using this as well. So and now you can do it with Wolf SSL as well. And you could do it already before with OpenSSL, NSS. Yeah, some more, I think. I don't remember off the top of my head. You can read it up. So someone asked me here in the chat then if we support the WhatWG standard for URL parsing. And no, we don't. We support RFC 3986, or as I call it, 3986 plus, because it's not RFC 3986 anymore. I have my own struggle with the WhatWG URL spec, and you can read my blogs, and I try to avoid my Twitter battles about it. But the main problem with the WhatWG spec, there are several problems with it. And one of the problems is that it's not backward compatible with this URL spec that curl has always supported. So switching parsing would mean breaking use cases that we haven't wanted to do. And also the WhatWG spec is so silly in some regards that I just have so far refused to adopt it. So in some parts we do follow it. So for example, you can actually use URLs with 1/ or you can use it with 3 slashes with curl, because I felt that since people are actually doing that on the net, we had to give in it's a really tongue twister to say that WhatWG URL spec, but according to that you can use any number of slashes. There's no limit. So the parsers can handle. I tried with 8,000 slashes, and Firefox was okay with it. Then you reach somewhere around there, you reach the maximum URL length that the browsers handle. Anyway, I think that's a entirely separate subject. I can go on and on about URLs. I won't today. Also Wolf SSL related, but we support NTLM when you build with Wolf SSL now. which was also just pretty much nobody had done the job to make sure that NTLM itself, the funny authentication method, uses some ancient crypto algorithms, and we use those crypto algorithms from the TLS library you build with. You use to build with curl. So we just happen to didn't have done the work to use the TLS, the Wolf SSL versions of those crypto functions. I think it's DES actually, completely outdated legacy. I don't think people even call it crypto these days. But anyway, now you can use NTLM with the Wolf SSL build. Actually, so, the what WG group, they didn't take old browsers quirks into the account. They rather cut legacy out and said, we don't care about how things worked in the past. This is how we want it to work in the future. And then they basically, we document how it should work, and this documents also what we do. So they have a, as another thing I have against the document, it's a living standard, which means that it never settles, it keeps moving. So even if we implemented support for it 3 years ago, it wouldn't be supporting that document anymore because they changed it. And that's the way the browsers want to do it. That's not the way you want to do it. I don't think that's the way to treat URLs, because URLs are supposed to be solid, stable, and work for decades into the future. But yeah. I told that they know how I feel about it, and they get upset when I am upset with them. I've fixed a few problems. I actually have some more problems pending on this. We had stored data. Internally in curl, we have 2 primary structs or objects when doing things. We have one object related to the transfer, and one separate struct object that is the connection. There, when you do a transfer over a single connection, they're mapped pretty much 1-to-1. One transfer using one connection, and then they're done. Then they're sort of disconnected, maybe. And if you're doing HP2, you can have multiple transfers using the same connection. And when the transfer is done, the connection is not used by the transfer anymore. The connection could be put back in the connection cache. There we have multiple connections, and then you could have multiple connection objects in the cache, one transfer, and maybe you set a new URL in the transfer object, and you would ask for another connection, another transfer. It would pick one of the connections from the cache or create a new one. So just saying that there are separate objects here. And I hadn't really thought about this before, but I discovered a case where we put data in the connection object that actually was related to the transfer object. Things related to the transfer was in the connection. So someone actually ran into a problem where when you would do multiple requests using the same connection, it would do the requests wrong because the data was stored in the connection instead of complicated. No, the URL spec is not. The WhatWG, they don't believe in version numbers. They believe in living documents. That means they don't have versions. They're documents. They keep moving. They're only at their latest version ever. So you don't know how they looked like a year ago. You don't know what they were supposed to do then. You only know what they're supposed to do now. And also, I said I wasn't going to, but they're also written in a really, I'm an IETF RFC guy. I know how to read RFCs, but they're written their spec in it's supposed to be easy to read, and they read like an algorithm or something, but reading the algorithms there and figuring out how to parse a URL is really hard, I think. So just read that spec sometimes and figure out how many slashes is okay. It's really hard to figure that out, I think. And I think that's another thing they should fix. But again, they like their way to do it. So, and a separate thing that went on here is that you know, I blogged about this separately too. That I've been trying to get curl to be compliant with the CII best practices project. Well, it was compliant since a long time ago, 100%, but I wanted it to be compliant with the silver level and then later gold level compliance at the best practices. And best practices at CII being Core Infrastructure Initiative. That means basically making sure that we comply to everything that a best practice open source project would do. And one of those things would be we should document how to do code reviews. Yeah, I noticed that I said CI. I have too little coffee so far. Well, doing a release does that to me. So CII best practices. And one of the things that you need to have as a best practice open source project at code level is a document describing how to do code reviews in the project. And while I first thought, why do we need that? But then I must confess that it's actually a pretty good idea to at least document what to, if you're a reviewer in the curl project, and anyone can be a reviewer in the curl project, right? Anyone just dive in and review a patch. The more the merrier. There's sort of some ideas and clues of what to look at and how to think about patches and sort of this is how I do it and we do it. So I just started writing down a few bullet points and then I tweeted about it and I got a few other people involved and they pointed out a few things, and so I think it turned out to be a really good document. So now it's I could actually click on it here. Boom. So this is the web page version of it. It's actually a markdown, so you can view it on GitHub as well. So it's just how to do code reviews for curl. And there's just a bunch of different things to look at. And of course, it might look like a lot of things here, but these are basically all the things that we could think of that is good to sort of keep in mind when reading code for curl, that or code that changes curl, patches that changes curl. A lot of them, maybe too much, maybe not, I don't know, but I think they're pretty good. So maybe we don't always detect all of these things when we review code in curl, but we should. So that's the bar. That's what's we should try to do that when reviewing code in curl. And when I did that document, that was the final one that we didn't have before in the curl project, and I could check it off, and we're now 100% compliant with the CII best practices. And you could actually look at it over here. Why did I go? I don't want to log in. I wanted to see and then I got it in Spanish. That's awesome. Why did I oh well. I'll skip that for now. You can read it out yourself if you want to check it out. Well, Spanish is cool too, so you could do it in Spanish as well. Yeah, so I fixed that. Of course, that wasn't really maybe not a bug fix. Well, it was a bug fix because it fixed us up to gold level. I don't know why he showed it in Spanish. It's actually all in English. But I thought I thought it linked to the curl entry there because it's a curl entry. It's number 63 there. So you could go there and see whatever I claim that we support. And no, I don't get this because I'm in a VPN. I get this because sites are stupid when they try to figure out what languages we speak. I imagine just a silly IP geolocation or whatever. I'm in Sweden. This is a Swedish IP, and my browser is probably set to speak English. Oh well. Yeah, they're probably ESSE. Probably mirrored my top level domain. I don't know. I haven't seen that problem before. Maybe it was just a temporary glitch. Let's ignore that for now. I had another one of the other things that you might have thought couldn't really happen in curl after this long time is that when you ask curl to follow a redirect and you do a post, for example, it would follow, you know, the 302 or 301 or 307 or 308 or 303, all those response codes, and some of them will actually change the method to another method, and it would change the URL then, of course, to follow the redirect. So it would do perhaps a get on the new URL. And that's all fine. It works pretty good. That in itself wasn't a mistake. But it turns out, so if you do that and you follow a redirect, and then you would, for example, reuse that easy handle, and you would set, oh, let's stop follow the redirect. I want to get that URL again. It wouldn't do that. It would actually use the updated URL. Because we would have had changed the URL wrongly within curl, so that it would had updated the wrong field pretty much, which nobody actually noticed until I did it. So apparently people don't reuse curl handles that way in production, but I found it and I fixed it. Actually, someone found a mistake in the way that if you do a post that follows a redirect that changes the method and then you use retry on it, it actually didn't retry the full post. It actually retried the subsequent possibly get, which complicated thing. I fixed that as well, but that was a separate issue. So a lot of bug fixes, and one of the more interesting ones, again, another IPv6 URL thing is, you know, I don't know if one of the, I think, least clever things I did with curl early on was that we did it do the globbing thing by default, you know, since it tries to do ranges if you do them within brackets, or lists if you do them within braces and stuff like that. So they do, curl does that by default, and it really can change that, since that would break a lot of scripts, right? And it turns out, so if you do things within brackets, that's also the way you specify numerical IPv6 addresses. And so in order to use IPv6 address, an IPv6 address, and not mistake it for a glob, we have a little parser. Does it look like an IPv6 address, or is it a glob? So yeah, that little parser was of course incomplete. So if you would use a zone ID with that IPv6 address, and that zone ID had a dash, we would treat it as a glob while it wasn't, so it would cause curl to error out. Long story, but I fixed that by making sure that now when we think it is an IPv6 address, I'm using the URL parser on that address to really parse it as an IPv6 address. Or if it's not an IPv6 address, the parser will fail and say failed, then it's a glob. Or maybe, or even maybe not. And if it's not a valid glob, it's a bad glob. So we have those different things. Anyway, I think it works. I added it. No, I don't think I added a test case for it because reasons. So as you can tell, I had a lot of fun this release cycle. I counted, as I mentioned, 136 bug fixes, and now I mentioned the funnest ones out of them, but I also had a bunch of less fun ones, and I decided to let's not talk about those. Well, you can, as I said, you can read about all of them in the release, in the changelog on the website, and they're all available. And you can also go to this, you know, I have this release table. You can go to Badoom, and then you can see a full release log about the number of bug fixes done per release, for example, and the number of vulnerabilities available in each release, and you can find direct links to all the change logs for each release and the delta time and release dates and everything. So it's all in there. Of course, if you are more interested in the vulnerabilities, you can go to the vulnerabilities page or the security problems pages. They list all known publicly available security problems we've had or have. Actually, all problems we know about are already fixed. We've announced them. Since we have announced the 2 of them today, we don't know about any others, and these are all the ones. And you can read about them here. You follow the links, and here are the information about them, and blah blah blah. Read up. And if you find other security or suspect other security related problems, we will give you a lot of money for that, and if you report it on the HackerOne page. So there's a link over there. Go there. Well, if you click that link, you will go to the HackerOne, our HackerOne page, and you should fill it in there, and we will take care of it and see if we agree with you and walk you through it and fix it if it's actually a security problem and we agree with it being a security problem. We don't always do that. We get a lot of reports that we disagree with, usually because people report silly things rather than actual things. But still, that's, I guess, is a subjective question. What is a silly thing and what's not, and what is a security problem really? We're focusing on security problems in the code, right? In our products, in curl, the command line tool, or Lib Curl, the library, not in our infrastructure, which people like to report. You can edit the wiki as any user. We get that report quite often. And yes, it's on purpose. It's a wiki. You're supposed to be able to edit it. So anyway, this is curl 7.71.0. Security is easier to define than silly. Yes, and silly, I would say you shouldn't be silly in this case. It's just me being this. Most of the reports these days are actually not, maybe not silly. And of course, even if someone reports a problem that they consider a problem, and we end up, in some cases, we end up not considering a security problem because it's really not something you can trigger or use it maliciously, or just not make happen without you being a local user that abuses curl. Anyway, so you can make it crash by doing silly things or crazy things locally, but that might not be a security problem. It depends on conditions, and yeah, we try to go through all that in the discussions before we while assessing if the report is a security problem or it's just a bug, or maybe nothing at all. Maybe it's even documented to work like that, and if it's documented to work like that, it's not a security problem, and it's not even a bug if we document it. That's how it works. If we add this crazy thing and curl does this, but it says so in the docs. Of course, we should not really document crazy things and to be okay, but still, also a matter of what you think is crazy. So actually, so far, I think one of the interesting things about doing a release, of course, is that how long does it take until the first bug fix appear? Well, sorry, the bug report, and especially nasty bugs. So nowadays we always do releases on Wednesdays, unless something really crazy, stupid happened. Usually I've done a stupid mistake in that case. So unless I do some stupid mistakes, we do releases on Wednesdays, and then we do another release 8 weeks later on that Wednesday. But nowadays then, so we have we don't open the feature window again until the Monday after release to give some time for panic releases or panic updates or patches or whatever. So we have a few days now that we're basically just taking it cool, breathing, waiting. Does things work? Do we get any updates, or do we have crazy bug reports? So we have a little time for that. Yeah. So far we got one typo PR filed after the release. Someone find a typo in the DynBuff document that I mentioned about the dynamic buffer API internal thing. And I think a typo is, I would call a minor bug. A bug, we will fix it, but nothing, panicky or people yelling in IRC because I was stupid. Well, I'm stupid, but people haven't yelled about that yet. So we'll see. I've got some another mistake in an advisory, but okay, nothing major. So hopefully there's nothing major, and then we will open the feature window again on Monday if things go okay, and we have a bunch of PRs adding features already. So I presume that the next version is going to be then, if there's not going to be a panic patch release, there's going to be a 772.0 in August. I think it's August 21 or something like that. In the end of the release procedure document, we have August 19 is the next release planned to happen. In the end of the release procedure document, we have a list of dates that we are sort of planning to do the subsequent releases, and we also have a link to the Google Calendar that you can actually subscribe to if you want to have full control of the coming release dates for curls. Actually, also the feature freezes are in there, so you can know ahead of time exactly when we plan to take the next get into the next phase in the project. Yes, what else to say? I don't think there's a lot more to say. I'm going to sort of round this off, this little presentation about the curl 771.0 June 24. I am Daniel, as you see at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to put this on YouTube soon. I'm going to try to do another twit me poking on curl codes soon again. I haven't been. I like to have really focused tasks when I do that, so that I can be productive, because it's hard to do random things all over like that, because I want to talk at the same time when I do things. So I need some more. But if you have ideas or if you want to see something me talk about stuff on the stream, let me know. I'm going to do a webinar next week on Tuesday, June 30, about testing curl testing curl for security is the title of it. You can see it in my blog. There's a link there if you want to register for it, but there's going to be a video uploaded about it after the fact anyway, so you don't need to attend if you don't want to. Of course, if you attend the webinar live, you can ask questions live as well. And this is going to be done evening time, Euro time, so morning US time. I have another webinar planned for August for Japanese time, but I don't think we have announced that yet. It's going to be different and different topic. I have a few other webinars coming up later as well. So there will be more. I will blog about it. I also have going to continue doing my blog posts, of course, on command line option of the week and other things. So it's never ending, this curl thing. Aren't you ever done? See you later, everyone. and have a nice week, and enjoy the new release. File bug reports if you find problems, and even better, file pull requests when you fix problems. And see you in the next release announcement in 8 weeks or so. Have fun. Bye.